And basically that was the point when my cash flow from our rental properties paid for our lifestyle and living expenses. So I no longer needed to be tied down to the W-2 anymore. Most of the people that are criticizing you on social media when you're starting out, or, even now, like, it was hard. It was really hard for me to get like these nasty messages and nasty comments and just stuff. It's like, why are people so hateful? I'm just trying to help leech on society. Stop it. How do I teach other people to do this stuff? Like, I don't just want to keep this to myself. I want to help other people. My goal was leave my job and have my time back. And now I work 2 to 3 hours a week managing our properties from wherever in the world that we want to be. We just spent 3 months down on an island over the winter time. So did I get to enjoy this stuff during these last 8 years? Not really. But it was the goal, the mindset of I want to eventually be able to enjoy this stuff that helped us get there faster.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Ryan Snod. It Rhymes with Odd, and you're listening and watching the Rhymes with Odd podcast. Today we have another amazing guest in the house. We got Matt Krueger from Rental Cashflow. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Awesome. Today we're going to have a really good conversation about all things real estate investing, social media influencing, if you will, and kind of the business you guys have built as a family. So really excited to kind of dive into all those things with you today.
Yeah, same here. Well, let's get into it.
Sure. So for people that kind of don't know who you are, what you do, if you run into somebody, and I would say like an Uber, or you're sitting next to somebody on a short flight and you're actually willing to talk to them for like 45 minutes or something, how do you introduce yourself to people? Like, what do you say, who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I am a full-time real estate investor. My wife says that I'm unemployed. I feel like that looks, not as great as saying full-time real estate investor. So that's what we do. I mean, as of October of 2022, I left the W-2 job behind, and we have only been doing real estate. So
just 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so,
awesome.
October 2022 is when we left, and basically that was the point when my cash flow from our rental properties paid for our lifestyle and living expenses. So I no longer needed to be tied down to the W-2 anymore. And so full-time unemployment, full-time real estate investor, whatever you want to say. So yeah.
That's dope. I know before we started, I think you told me you have 10 doors currently.
Yeah. So we're moving some things around. I think we've done 14, 15 real estate transactions now. I'm all for buying and holding, but we had a duplex that was not cash flowing as much as I'd like to be. Also, we kind of started more with long-term rentals, and then we've just moved more into short-term rentals over the last couple of years. And I'm seeing a lot more cash flow potential from those. So we sold the duplex last month, and I'm hoping to buy a couple more short-term rentals, single-family homes in the next hopefully 6 months here. So
that's cool. So when you sell a duplex, do they just like send you a check? Because every time I've bought a house, like we've taken the profit and just put it on the down payment for the next place. So I've never actually seen the money. Did they just send you like a massive check for that duplex and you're just like, I've got all this money?
So the wonderful thing about real estate, I mean, there's really 4 reasons to invest, right? Number one, and my favorite, is cash flow investing, where, your goal is to, basically make, they're paying the rent. You're charging more, for the rent than your mortgages. So if you're charging $15 and your mortgage is $1,000, your cash flow is the $500, right? That's your net income.
Sure.
Number 2 is appreciation. Which that's what we had here, right? So the reason we sold this was because we would make a profit on it. So I bought the thing for $130,000, and then I sold it for $180,000 a year and a half later. There was all the extra fees and stuff because we did use a realtor with that, but still walked away with $40,000 or so after everything was said and done, 35. And but yeah, they send you a check. I put 20% down on that as well, of just money that we had saved from actually flipping another property. So that was a nice check. But we do like creative financing things. So we had a HELOC, home equity line of credit, and we were just paying part of that off with that money as well. So
sure.
But yeah, so the big check came, big check left, but I did see it for a second. So
sure. Yeah, I know when my wife and I, we had a pretty big tax return this last year, and we always had to pay because we're small business owners, so we always had to pay. And then we got some stuff dialed. Then we actually got a bunch back, and we're like, what do we do? And then like the next day, a bunch of bills came out, so we only had like 12 hours to like look at it. Like take a screenshot while it's in the bank account because you never know when we'll see this again. It's like a harvest moon.
Oh yeah. As an investor though, if I've got a bunch of money sitting in my bank account that I'm doing something wrong, I'd rather have it sitting in assets like rental properties anyway. So that's all right.
Sure. Awesome, man. Well, before we kind of get to current day, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your backstory. Like, how did a guy working at a Sprint store end up becoming a real estate investor and doing the stuff you're doing in such a short, accelerated time too? That's really exciting.
Yeah. So I will take you back to the early days. I actually went to college to be a youth pastor. A lot of people don't know that about me. I went to just a private Baptist school in local Ankeny, Iowa, and got a degree.
Are you from Central Iowa originally?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So I got a degree, was going to be youth pastor, ended up graduating, and I wouldn't say it was like a huge passion of mine, but it was just kind of like I enjoy working with kids, and it seems like something that would be enjoyable, and got my degree, graduated, and it's like I cannot find a job that pays anything that's local, and I didn't want to move. So I landed a job at a local Sprint store as a sales rep. It was like $8 an hour plus commission, which was like an extra $2 or $3 an hour, just depending on how well I could sell. It was a slow store.
Ballin'.
Yeah, right. Just rolling in the dough. But I needed to pay bills, so I got that job. I ended up working my way up. So after about a year and a half, I was a district manager with them, running 5 stores, had about 25 employees, and I loved what I was doing. But I ended up, most of my career, I worked in the cellular industry in some capacity. In my last job that I left in October of 2022, I was a account manager with Google on the Google Pixel program, actually. But it was 2014. My wife and I got married, and we ended up buying. So we were living in an apartment for a little while. We ended up buying our first house. It would have been the beginning of 2015. Our mindset at that time was not real estate investing. It was don't want to pay rent anymore. Would rather be building equity and paying off a mortgage. So our first home was $90,000, and our goal with that was 2 things. At the time, I was making about $35,000 a year, so I'm like, I can't afford crap anyway. So let's buy what we can afford. And I think I could buy up to like $120,000. But we found this house. It was essentially the definition of grandmother's home: carpet in the kitchen, orange shea carpet in the bedrooms, wood paneled walls, all that stuff. And
they have a carpet in the bathroom too?
No, the bathroom had been updated.
Okay.
But everything else was super old and outdated. So
Granny was tired of stepping in all of the urine when you're going to the bathroom.
Yeah, I guess so. So we bought this house. Dude, I was so broke. I was like, I at the time it was, buy a house. I like art. So her parents are real estate investors, and that kind of helped us, have the mindset of it. But I didn't know how I could buy a rental property. So at the time it was just like, let's just buy a house. So we bought our first home as a primary residence, owner occupant, which I only needed 3% down on a conventional loan for. So that was something I could actually afford, because there's no way I was going to afford 20% down at that time. So
sure. Well, 3% down on $90,000, it's like $2,500. And that's not bad at all.
I found a bank, and a lot of banks still do this, but first time home buyer program, where I got $1,000. We actually, it was like this deal with the Iowa Wild hockey team. So we actually got to go to an Iowa Wild game. We held up this giant $1,000 check on the teleprompter deal, and then the mascot was at our closing. So
Crash showed up at your closing?
He was. I need to find that picture, because somebody else asked me for it, but I'm like, yeah, we literally have him there with us, at closing. It was super weird.
You're shaking hands and he's going like clapping quietly because they never speak. They're just like clapping.
But that shaved $1,000 off of closing costs, and then we also offered the seller an extra $2,000 total for the asking price, so $92,000 to cover the rest. Which a lot of people don't realize. It's like, even if the seller's not willing to pay, I mean, you can negotiate, but it's like, can I just pay you $2,000 more? Basically, that was our way of getting closing costs wrapped into the loan instead of needing to come with them up front. So it was like $2,000, $2,500 that we brought to closing, bought this house, and we renovated it as we lived there. So we lived there for a year. Our mortgage payment was about $620 a month, and we did things on our own, and we learned as we went through it. We learned how to tile, how to do laminate flooring, how to lay down carpet, and all sorts of stuff. And then after a year, that's when we were like, I need to do something, because I was maybe doing like 40, 42K a year at that time, because I had moved, up positions and become a district manager through that time. And but it's just like, I don't have, anything really set up for my kids for the future to be able to support, my family. Like, what the heck am I going to do? Now I had a passion for what I was doing, but it just didn't pay very well. So like, let's try and buy a rental property. And our thought was, I was driving a lot for work at the time and listening to real estate podcasts and just trying to learn this stuff. And it was harder to get approved for loans and stuff back then, and without needing 20% down for something. Like, it was just like, what the heck am I going to do? I had heard of this method called house hacking, right? Everybody knows what house hacking is. But the picture of house hacking that most people draw is you have to buy a multi-unit property. It has to be a duplex or a threeplex or whatever. You live in one side and you rent out the rest. That is not what we did. So we house hacked, but I wish I knew the guy, but I was listening to a podcast and he mentioned this method of house hacking where essentially you just buy a property, move into it, live in it for a year, and then move out and rent it out. So that's what we did. We moved out. We bought another property, 130K, that also needed a significant amount of cosmetic work. We moved into it, and then I rented out the first home. So 3% down again for our second home. Had a $620 mortgage. I rented out our first house for $1,200 a month. And that was my first real taste of like, whoa, like we can make money doing this. And we were excited about it. And, the cash flow was essentially paying for the mortgage, plus giving us $600 a month to cover the majority of our next mortgage as well. And it's like, let's build on this. So we ended up moving. We moved a total of 5 times in 5 years. We accumulated children and stuff during that time. We eventually found a house, which we're living in today, that we've been there for about 5 years, small acreage with a house that needed a lot of work, but it was land and location that we wanted. So we've stuck
How many acres are you guys on?
We have 3, but my in-laws have 28 that's connected to it.
Oh, nice.
So their house there's like 11 acres between us or something like that.
Close, but not too close.
Yeah, so like
you got to drive a 4-wheeler to get over there.
I can stand out on my back deck and not see them, and they can't see us. Especially the corners up their house is gone too. So it's a win-win, and they've got a bunch of timber, so we can ride 4-wheelers around and all of that stuff. So it's a blast. But yeah, so 5 homes, 5 years. And then after that point, I call it the reverse debt snowball. We've really only good debt, right? Where we're accumulating houses, but we decided at that point to use the cash flow to fix up the house that we moved into. So we took kind of a 2-year break as we renovated. I gutted this house for the most part. And then we took out a home equity line of credit. So a HELOC is what that's called, where basically I was able to borrow equity out of the house that we're living in now, out of our primary residence. We were able to borrow $150,000. And then I used that to really start, investing quite a bit more and more aggressively. And we grew a bunch from there. So, but yeah, it was kind of one thing after the next, but that's how we started.
Sure. That's really exciting. I think it's interesting too, just the speed of it. Cause I think a lot of people think, to accumulate properties, it would take decades to get to that point. But like you said, once you kind of saw proof of concept with that first home and grew it that way, because are most of your properties, or when you started, I'm assuming they're all like in the Des Moines area. Where are kind of your properties at now, current day? Yeah,
so we've got properties mostly in Des Moines, but we do have some property in northeast Iowa as well. That was actually where we just sold the duplex. We got a 4-plex up there too.
What town or area?
The city of Olwine, Iowa.
Never heard of it.
You know where like Waterloo, Cedar Falls? Yeah, okay. Independence, Iowa?
Yeah, I heard of that.
It's like 20 minutes north of Independence. So it's like 40 minutes north and east from Waterloo.
Sure.
So, yeah, really little, small farmer town, but, good rentals up there. So
Sure. Well, and I've even seen just like looking around on like Marketplace or Zillow or other places, like I've found places that would be like, the building itself would be an amazing commercial space for me to own, because it's it's like basically built out, but it's in like BFE, Iowa, like 4 hours away. I'm like, like if that house or the building could just be here, like that would be like location's everything, right?
Yeah, we did buy out of state one time down on South Padre Island in Texas. We bought a condo with an intention to have it as a short-term rental Airbnb. And the market was shifting during that time. That was March of 2022. I moved the family down there for a month as we renovated it, and I was still working remote at that time. But We ended up flipping it. 5 weeks, we owned that condo. We put about 12 grand into it for renovation cost. I bought it for 210. I sold it for 325.
Holy cow!
For sale by owner. We just were like, let's throw it up there and just see what happens. And had 2 offers for 5 grand over asking price within 24 hours, cash offers. So I'm like, well,
you didn't get the one season to enjoy that thing.
Sell this thing. So yeah, because the cash flow just wasn't enough to make it worth keeping at the time. So yeah, we were happy, and that kind of helped. People say, well, you got lucky. It's like it's about building relationships and putting yourself out there too, and that's how you grow. You got to teach yourself and learn, and don't just be, I'll say small-minded with, because that's how I used to be. Well, got to save 20% down, and then there's no houses out there. So like, what do I do? Like, you got to really try to, figure things out.
Well, and I think finding the right flow that you feel comfortable with it too, because some people might want to do like 1 or 2 homes or 1 or 2 properties, and their cash flow, like you said, a couple $100 a month from each.
Yep.
Oh, great. We'll just buy and hold it forever.
Yeah.
But I think you guys really had a clear vision for that. Explain to me like when you guys collectively had that decision to shift it, where it's like, this isn't just a little like side thing.
Yeah.
Like, we want to go all in on this.
Yeah. So once we moved into the house that we're in now, so we had, what do we have? 3 rental properties, because we ended up selling the first one. It was falling apart, needed new owners to take care of it. So we had 3, and I don't know, that's kind of when things shifted for us, because we were like, well, like, hold on here. We got all this cash flow, and it's paying for our mortgage. It's paying for some living expenses, other things like that. Like, I always had the vision of like, I can maybe leave my full-time job early, like maybe in my mid 40s, we'll shoot for that and see what happens. And that if I had stayed with long-term rentals only, that's very possible that it would have been maybe 40, 45 by the time I would have been able to leave. But it was about, getting out of my comfort zone and trying something new with short-term rentals. That really helped speed that process up. So I officially retired. I don't know if retirement is what you want to call it, but left at 29 instead. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of when it became a reality, was just like, this can help me retire early. And we bought our first short-term rental a little over 2 years ago. And it's like, wow, like we could actually make this happen way sooner. And then even when I did leave, I had not planned to for at least another year, because I loved what I was doing too. I loved my previous employer, was fantastic, but they were having me travel more, and with the 4 kids after COVID, it was like, this is the answer. Like, this is the time, and we jumped, and once we've jumped, it just kind of all fell into place. And when you go, when you go into business on your own and you take that leap away from your employer, it's like that business it's like, I got to rely on this 100%. So I'm going to put 100% of my effort into it instead of the 40, 50% that I was putting before. And that business becomes way more profitable when you do that. So
Sure. Well, I think when you guys got to that point where you're going from a couple to multiple, was there like a dollar amount or a number of properties goal that you had before you jumped to make it? Or was it just like you guys had already had 3 or 4 and you're like looking at your finances and you're like, oh, like, we could do this?
Yeah. So the goal was have my cash flow surpass my salary. Now my salary grew over time, but even in my best paying job, my salary, I think I never made more than 68. So, it's not like I ever made tons of money to be able to do this. But my goal was, meet that 68 and then maybe get one more property after that point. But I procrastinated with it, where we had passed that about a year or so prior, and it was just kind of because you can have up to 10 conventional loans on one individual, and that had kind of become a goal of let's just try and max out our conventional loans, and I think we had 9, so we were going to do another one, but it's just it's not worth just trying to get a lower interest rate and a better loan to keep pushing this off. So it was definitely the surpassing my salary, but then I don't know. So anybody out there who you're thinking about, I went to a conference and I had to hear some other people tell me dude, just leave your job. If you can make it, just leave your job and everything else will fall into place, and you'll put more effort in and you'll see growth. And And I needed to hear that, and I finally did it, and I'm so glad that I did, and I wish I had done it a year prior. So
Sure. Well, you talked about the pros and cons of like long-term versus short-term. Tell me a little bit about that, because I know for those listening, like long-term's like you have one renter in there for a period of time compared to like short-term's like Airbnb, is it VRBO or Verbo? People bounce around like
I think it's technically VRBO I don't know. People say Verbo, but I think it's VRBO.
I saw a VRBO ad and they said Verbo, like the company said. I'm like,
I've heard both. I've heard literally, employees say both, so I don't really know. But
they should clear that up.
Yeah, maybe
change their name to Ground Airbnb.
There we
Ground
go.
B&B.
There we go. But vacation rental by owner. That's the official. That's what it is. But so long-term rental is typically anything. I would say like longer than 3 months at a time. So you've actually got 3 classifications of rentals. You've got a long-term rental, which is going to be like 3 months or more. Typically, like you'd have a minimum of a 6-month lease, maybe a year lease. This is the standard like rental property. When people think of investment property, rental property, this is what you're thinking of. You've got a tenant who's in there, sign a lease, you're done, move on, right? Then you've got what's called a midterm rental. Typically, midterm rentals are anywhere from like 1 month to 3 months. This is super this is just kind of the standard that I'm going to give for this, but they can go longer just depending on the need. But typically they're nothing less than 1 month, or 28 nights, I think is typically like the minimum. But
I think of like a travel nurse or someone that's like in town, which I know that market's huge in Des Moines because there's so many hospitals, but like they're only here for a 3-month term by contract for their job. They wouldn't stay in a hotel. They wouldn't rent an Airbnb would be too expensive. Like finding the right middle ground there.
So a midterm rental, MTR, you're going to have typically like traveling professionals and stuff stay there. But you're looking at having 1 to 3 months or so. Usually this is a fully furnished rental property. So this is not an empty house. That would be a long-term rental. They move in with all of their own stuff. You have this furnished for them. They just bring their luggage and move in. That would be midterm rental, but that's not quite as popular as a short-term rental, STR, short-term rental, vacation rental. A lot of people just call it an Airbnb. It's not called an Airbnb. It's like, calling a facial tissue Kleenex, right? That's just the brand that's, predominant out there. So, but they do own the market. People book through Airbnb more than anywhere else. So we can call it that too. But that is typically 28 nights or less. I don't know why it stops at that, but typically more than that would be, over a month. And there's some HOAs and stuff that have restrictions on things. So be careful, make sure that you're following that stuff. But usually you're going to get 2 nights, 3 nights, 4 nights at a time. It's rare that I have one-nighters. Sometimes I do. We do not allow one-night stays on the weekends anyway, but we will get them sometimes through the week. But usually,
and why is that?
Parties.
Okay.
You just have a lot more. I don't know. There's multiple things. Parties are part of it. If you do not allow one nights on Fridays or Saturdays, it pretty much alleviates the possibility of a party. Iowa, the chances are not quite as high, but there are still there. I mean, we have, one next to Drake and stuff too. So, but, we also see it's just like the turnover process is extensive. We've got larger homes, one of them's a 4-bed, 3-bath, and, the cleaning fee is $155. We actually pay our cleaner a little bit more than that. But I want to keep the cleaning fees as low as I can. So it just doesn't make financial sense to do it. It's just more effort and then more work on our end because we've got to deal with the communication and all of that stuff too. So it just makes it easier. There's enough demand for the longer stays to not break it apart. We can see more profit that way too.
Sure. Because I think of the times my wife and I have done Airbnb. Mm-hmm. I guess it has usually been 2 nights, 3 nights, but it's going to Nashville for a weekend or something, or you're going to Texas for a conference or something. It's not usually just one night. Yeah. There have been some that we've done that, but I guess we've never noticed anybody be kind of concerned but it's usually if it's just 2 people, compared to me and all my frat brothers are going to come for one night and just tear the whole place apart.
Oh, yeah. So. Yeah. So there's multiple reasons, but parties, I don't like to break it apart because you will get a lot of people that are well, I need 3 nights. and now I can't book it. So we just booked one night, and then we lost the profit that we could have made off of a 3-night stay because it doesn't work for them now. So
Sure.
But yeah, so short-term rental, long-term rental, and midterm rental. Midterm's not as popular, but it is growing in popularity for sure, especially as some Airbnb restrictions are coming in more states and areas. More people are leaning towards that because that avoids that stuff. But
and have you found success with short-term in Des Moines specifically? Because when I think of short-term, I think like tourist destination, college town. Like I have a couple of people I follow online. One of them's he goes by the Buff Nerds. It's Jacob Owens, and they're in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
Or he's actually in Tempe, I think. So it's like near Arizona State.
Yeah.
Super successful because there's all these families that come to visit.
Yep.
And there's no hotel. Yep. So then they stay in his rentals there. So
yeah. So being totally transparent, when we opened our first short-term rental, I was absolutely terrified. If you are getting into real estate investing and you are not terrified about what you're doing, then you must be doing something wrong. Don't go in so confident. You don't know everything. Trust me, I do not know everything. I know very little, and I've been doing this for 10 years now. So, but I was nervous because I had no idea, is this property going to rent? Are we actually going to be able to find people? Am I going to be able to find cleaners? How do I do this? I don't even know what I'm doing. But I always like to be more hands-on. So I'm, living in Des Moines, it's like, let's just throw it in Des Moines and see what happens. I did my research. I utilize a company called AirDNA. I'll actually be launching a video hopefully tomorrow, maybe later today with them. I'm doing a partnership with them currently, but they're
brand sponsorship.
I know. Brought to you by AirDNA.
There you go.
But they're fantastic. It's the number one search company out there for helping you figure out like insights on markets, different like occupancy rates, nightly rates, amenities, different types of properties. So like for Des Moines, they actually give Des Moines a very bad score. It says do not invest here. But I'm like, I want to try it. And even if it fails, at least I can learn how to do it and have my hands in it a little bit more than trying to go out of state because I was just way too uncomfortable to do that. So we saw through AirDNA that there was only 10% of properties in the Des Moines metro area had 4 bedrooms or more. But 90% was 3 bedrooms or less, sleeping max of like 6 to 8 people. So I'm like, at the time there was like 900 short-term rentals around the entire Des Moines metro, including
that many.
Ankeny, Altoona, all of that stuff.
Wow.
It's actually a very little number. It seems like a lot, but it's very few. But yes, more than what you would normally think from a first glance going through Des Moines. But yes, so we're like, let's do larger properties. But if we're going to do this, let's just blow it out of the water. So we decided to do properties that were like Smoky Mountain type of properties where we've got hot tubs and, like commercial hot tubs and game rooms with fancy arcade games and themes and accent walls and murals and all of this stuff to just have like these high-end properties in Des Moines.
It's more of an experience for people than just a house.
Exactly. And that's what we wanted to do was create not just a place to stay, but a place that your family can gather together and have an experience together. So we've done quite well. I don't know if I'd say that Des Moines is the number one investment spot for Airbnbs, but I can tell you that I've coined the term accommodation location. There is still definitely need in like small Midwestern areas near hospitals and hotels and event venues and stuff. I mean, we get different like wedding groups coming in or family reunions or buddies going golfing, or there's a quilt show that was going on at the Hy-Vee Hall or the Pork Expo or the Iowa State Fair. We get those.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, man, it's like people come in for that stuff and people just don't think it's like, yeah, they're not coming to vacation, but there's still a need for a larger home for multifamily gatherings or even just a smaller place that's not a hotel where you have more privacy. So don't get stuck on the vacation spots because there's definitely a need. But no matter where you are, make sure that you stand out and go all in because otherwise you will not be competitive.
Sure. Well, I know my wife and I just went to a wedding in Nashville.
Yep.
And that was kind of like just looking at the map of how many places, but that's probably like the number one place to invest because there's it's more popular than Vegas for a vacation destination anymore. So
yeah, it's getting harder though because there's so many out there. I think it's the number one bachelorette capital of the world or country or something. I don't know. So there's a lot of bachelorette areas like the Airbnbs out there, but it's getting a lot more competitive where I'm seeing people just not. I mean, they're still making money, but not quite what it used to be. So it just depends. With any market, be competitive and, make sure that your property stands out. So people are definitely adding more than what they used to. And people will say like, well, Airbnb is failing, or there's this Airbnb bust is what it was called 6 months ago, right? Where people are just seeing this decline in hosts or people that are not being profitable. But that's the shift, right? It's so many people back in 2021 just were throwing up grandma's home on Airbnb and making money because there wasn't anything else out there. But now people, I would say like myself, are coming in and actually creating that experience and, creating this whole deal where guests come in and they have all of these amenities and they have this experience. They have this superb communication and you have your, great photography and everything else that's really offering the best of the best. And those hosts that don't do this are failing. I mean, I'm seeing properties for sale in Des Moines where it's just, here's some beds and here's some walls and here's like 3 spoons for a place that sleeps 10 people. It's like, okay, well, yeah, you're not going to make money if you're not, doing it right.
Sure. Well, and especially when Airbnb hit the scene, it was cheaper than hotel initially. Yep. Now they've kind of flipped it where now it's a little bit more premium because you are getting this different experience than like a Best Western in the woods or something like that.
Yeah, I see that comment a lot. It's like, well, Airbnb is not as cheap as hotels or hotels are less expensive now. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, when it came out, it used to be rent a spare bedroom in somebody's house or sleep on their couch or whatever. And I mean, there still are people offering that. And I would say those people are still less expensive than hotels. But if you're looking at renting a small house with a hot tub and kitchen and living room and all of these other things, why wouldn't it be more expensive than a small 300 square foot studio hotel room? I mean, that's a no-brainer for me. Like I rent an Airbnb with my family because I've got 4 kids. And I mean, you've got 2 kids. Like when you go, like, I don't want to do more than, 1 or 2 nights in a hotel, which I do. If I'm traveling, just staying a couple nights, I'll choose a hotel. But if I'm doing longer, we need the space and it's healthy for our mental sanity.
Sure. Well, I even saw, I think it was a Super Bowl ad that it was like right on the head for Airbnb. It's like, when you've got a bunch of kids, like the kids can go to bed at 6:30 or 7, and then you can stay up and do other stuff. Where if you're in a hotel room, the whole family goes to bed at 7, and it sucks. It's like that's the one selling point. Absolutely, like I would totally do that.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think that's interesting. As you're kind of accumulated all your properties and done all the things you've done, what's been kind of like one of the crazier tenant stories that you've had? I'm sure there's been a lot, but just like things that stick out that you're just like had a tenant that was just doing weird stuff, or they did something interesting?
So it's very different between long-term and short-term for sure. Long-term rentals, surprisingly, we haven't had like too many major issues come through.
Which is good.
Yeah, people will say like, well, you're going to have tenants destroying your property all the time and you just never make any money. It's like, well, number one, I don't buy turnkey properties. I've said this. I buy properties that need equity added, that need cosmetic updates, that need these things. So that way I can get in there, I can do this stuff, and then the property is worth more. So even if I do decide someday to sell it, I can make money for sure. There's just no doubt. But on top of that, if I buy a property for less and then I put $10,000 into it or whatever, then my mortgage is cheaper and I can charge more and have better cash flow. But we have always bought properties, I would say like in B plus type of neighborhoods. So they're not, lower slumlord type of homes. And to be as sensitive about this as I can, if you buy a property in a nicer area, 90% of the time you're also going to get a little bit higher quality tenant. Now we interview well, we go through, make sure that, they're checking all the boxes and stuff. From a tenant perspective, we get to know them a little bit before we just move them in there. But that has helped alleviate so many issues. We still have some. We had one tenant that left a house super dirty, that drove their car into the garage door and tried to blame it on, nature. I don't know. But take detailed photos the day before they move in so that way you can show them the condition of the property when they move out. But no huge horror stories with long-term rentals. With short-term rentals, however, it was actually our second guest. We were brand new, and you learn as you go. But we had a guest. So our first one was like 3 nights. We were super happy about that. The second one was actually 26 nights. And that's the longest guest I've ever had, and I will never allow that again. I don't do the longer stuff because typically the longer somebody's there, the more destruction and damage that they can do. But I allowed pets at the time. I don't anymore. I know it's a mixed subject and to each their own on it, but this was part of the reason. But they had 2 dogs. They were super respectful, and they're like, yeah, like everything, like we have no problem with your rules. I mean, we had just like freshly carpeted. Like, this was our baby. This was our first house, so we had done all this work too. And they were there 26, 27 nights, something like that. When they left, they had basically broken every rule possible. We had told them, keep the dogs on the lower level. You can bring them, but don't have them upstairs where the carpet's at. Not a problem. I mean, there's plenty of space. It was just bedrooms upstairs. They basically gave the dogs each their own bedroom and shut them in there because you could see basically they had torn out the doors and torn out the carpet trying to get out of the rooms. So the carpet was all frayed at the doorways. I have never seen so much dog hair in my life. We had to just about burn all of the bedding, had to get some of the carpet repaired. They didn't clean up after the dogs. I filled up 3 5-gallon buckets worth of dog stuff in the backyard.
Oh my gosh.
After they left, they had some sort of explosion in the kitchen and just like burnt out a couple outlets. There was brown stuff all over the walls. The toilets, I've never seen something like this. It took 18 hours to go through and clean the whole thing. We ended up actually going through Airbnb they call it air cover. It's not insurance, but it gives you an option to be able to charge the guests for stuff. So we have to put an invoice together. They broke our brand new table, all of these things. So we put all of that together, had everything professionally, fixed or repaired, and then sent that. The guest never responded, of course. But Airbnb came through and they paid out. So we ended up getting not as much as I wanted, but it was like $1,800 back out of the deal. So I will never do something longer like that again. I know some hosts offer or they require, a cleaner must go through once a week if you're doing a longer stay or something, but I just don't deal with it. Our average length of stay is 2.7 nights, and I like to keep that in there, get a cleaner in there more often, and it alleviates damage and stuff like that. So
sure. That's crazy, though, hearing some of these stories, because I know when my buddies and I did spring break in Clearwater, Florida. Yep. And similar to what you mentioned with the Texas people, Clearwater hates spring breakers because it's like, we're not PCB, stay away. And so there's 4 of us that went, and we had a condo that was like overlooked the ocean, and we got it all set up, and there's like 4 levels to this place. It was pretty crazy. But awesome. The family had just inherited a bunch of money from a grandpa, bought this investment property, fixed it up. We were the first renters. They were so terrified to have us come in. They asked us what our majors were, what our GPAs were.
But can you blame them? Probably not.
Yeah, so, but and I even told the lady, she kept calling us before because she did not want to. And she's like, "We just got this. We don't." And I'm like, if you don't want to rent it to us, then don't. That's fine. I get it. Looking at us from the 10,000 foot, we're rowdy college guys, whatever. I'm like, yes, we're gonna drink and have fun. We're gonna clean up afterward. We're not gonna destroy this place. Yep. And they were just so fearful. And again, I'm just like, maybe don't get into the rental game, because if you're this scared of every person, how do you go about calming your nerves so you're not constantly on edge thinking of oh God, I got this people that might destroy my place in there. Yeah.
As a real estate investor, you need to separate yourself and think, this is not, although for us, it was hard because we lived in properties, right? So, we lived in them and we fixed them up as we lived there. So it was hard letting go of it. But as a real estate investor, you need to separate yourself between what is, value to you because you worked on it and what is value to you because you're making money off of it. And if you separate it, your mind and think, this is an investment, this is here to make me money, and not this is, a tangible object that I put some time into and, my heart and soul and sweat and tears and whatever. But, maybe you did, but separate yourself from it. And that's when you can really see a lot more cash flow. So it's a mindset change is what it is. And got to know, it's like if you're renting a property out, you're going to get stuff broken. You're going to have to repair stuff. People are going to do dumb stuff that you don't want them to do. But at the end of the day, it's all part of it. So
this episode is brought to you by my company, Snod Media Group. Do you like the look and sound of this podcast? Of course you do. It's awesome. There are a ton of benefits to having a podcast. Sharing content online, networking with high-value people, and being a voice in your industry, and the list goes on. If your dreams of starting a podcast have quickly turned into nightmares, realizing how much stuff you have to learn and understand to get a published episode out every single week, I'm here to tell you that I can make your dreams come true. As long as those dreams are podcast related. We are now taking rentals for our podcast room here in the Snod Media Group studio. Gone are the days of spending thousands of dollars and setting up all of your professional camera equipment and probably screwing it up, learning how to capture and produce a professional level show, and probably screwing it up, learning professional video editing, posting social clips on social media, having a distribution calendar, the whole 9 yards. It sounds like a lot because frankly, it is. And let's face it, who has time to do all that stuff anyway? My team and I, that's who. Let us take all of the stress of creating content off of your plate. Simply come in, sit down, record your episode, and leave. A couple days later, you'll have all of your files sent directly to your inbox. It really is that simple. Our quiet studio off the beaten path in Granger, Iowa comes complete with soundproofed walls, as you can see here, wood backdrops, as well as a neutral backdrop, and professional lighting. Utilize over $20,000 worth of camera, audio, and lighting equipment with this turnkey space. You can not only use this podcast room, but other parts of our studio to capture social media content or more conversational pieces as well. We have 3 different packages that can suit your needs and your budget. So let's bring those podcast dreams to reality. For more information about starting your very own podcast here at the studio, visit snodmedia.com/podcast. Now let's get back to the interview. Sure. Well, I always think too, like my wife and I, our first property was in Northeast Des Moines near Bridgestone Factory, like that kind of neighborhood.
Yep.
So we always say it wasn't like a gentrified area, but it was kind of like that. Like our neighbors were all different types of people, different backgrounds. We didn't know half the neighbors until like the week we were moving out. People were introducing themselves, and we'd lived there for 3-4 years. I'm like, never seen you before ever. But I always thought too, I'm like, it would have been an interesting thought to get to the point where if we could have kept that one and rented it out. Cause I think that would have been a really interesting look at it. But again, the market was great. We ended up selling summer of 2020 when our interest rates were like 2.5%. It was when we got our current place. And I want to say we sold our house for like $80,000 or $90,000 profit in 3 years, and we were there. So it's like, again, we were happy with it. We took all of that and put it into our next house to knock down our mortgage payment. But explain a little bit about like the struggle of getting to that point, because then you're like, okay, I'm going to keep the first one, but we want to like how did you decide whether to do the rental side or to take all the money and buy a bigger, nicer house?
Yeah. So I think like for me at least, I needed to figure out what my goals were. Like, what are your long-term goals? I think we live in a society where so many people just live off of what they make, and it's all about appearances. There's a book, what is it called? The Millionaire Next Door, I think. I might be slaughtering that. But I became a millionaire at 26, and I didn't even know it right away because it was through equity in properties and stuff. And we lived on not rice and beans, but pretty close, ramen. No. We'd been paying cash for cars, buying beater stuff because our mindset and our goals were aligned with like, we will eventually be able to enjoy this stuff, but our goal is not to have the things, it's to have the time. So it really depends on what your goals are. And think about that. Set yourself up on a plan of like, not just my goal is to have 10 houses and leave my job. It's to, how do I get to that first house? And then what do I need to do to get to the second house? So many people get caught up in the excuses of like, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I don't have the knowledge. But most people, they have the time and they have the money and they can, get the knowledge. They're just not willing to. There's a quote that I learned. I need to remember who says this, but use your weekends and evenings to build the life you want, not escape the life you have. And people hear, well, it took us 8 years to get to the point where I could leave my job. They don't know what we went through to get there. And it's not pretty. Like, it was really, really hard, where I'm working 40, 50 hours a week, getting off work at 6. I'm going over to a house and I'm fixing that house and we're working there until 11. We're putting kids down in pack and plays in bedrooms with no carpet. And, just it's like we were living in that stuff. And then weekends, like making lots of sacrifices. Like we tried to do the best that we could to make sure that we prioritize family time. But like we made a commitment at the beginning, we were going to do it as a family. I wasn't just going to be me going somewhere. It was going to be us doing it together. But like to jump from the 1 to the 2 to the 3, it's all about what what your goals and aspirations are. I mean, if your goal is to live in a nicer house and to drive a nicer car, then use it for that. But like my goal was leave my job and have my time back. And now I work 2 to 3 hours a week managing our properties from wherever in the world that we want to be. We just spent 3 months down on an island over the winter time. So did I get to enjoy this stuff during these last 8 years? Not really. But it was the goal, the mindset of I want to eventually be able to enjoy this stuff that helped us get there faster.
I love it. Yeah, I love that. That's like a bumper sticker quote. Don't use your weekends to escape the life you have. Use it to build the life you want. I love that.
Yep.
We'll take a pause from this for a second. I'm loving where the conversation's going. We're going to do what we call the lightning round. So,
you warned me about this ahead of time.
Yes.
So, okay.
Basically, just rapid fire questions. You can one-word answer them. If there's funny stories, I mean, there's no rules. We can do whatever. It's a podcast. For God's sake, we can take a breather.
Let's do it.
Favorite property that you own that you maybe either vacation at or that you have a certain sentimental tie to?
Sure. So we own all of our properties in Iowa right now. So I do not vacation at any of them. But my favorite property, I love our short-term rentals, our Airbnbs. They are fun. We put our heart and soul into them to decorate them and to make them. I mean, like we've got 2 houses that were like, man, we could live in these houses. These are great. Where you've got like a house that's almost better than your own. It's a short-term rental. It's downtown Des Moines. It sleeps 14 people.
Oh, wow.
I've got a full 6-person commercial hot tub out back. There's a third. It technically has 4 levels. So there's the basement, which is like dungeon old, 1896 is when the house was built. So you don't go down there. Main level that's got kitchen, living room with big screen TV, pull-out couches, office space, laundry room, walks out back to this. I rented a little skid loader and I literally built this entire patio back there out of pavers and have a fire pit with Adirondack chairs and a hot tub and barbecue and deck and everything. But there's a game room. The second floor is bedrooms and a bathroom. The third floor is literally it's a full bathroom with a loft. There's no beds up there. There's no fire escape for a bed, so I can't. But I've got beanbag chairs and I've got these swing chairs hanging from the ceiling. And then big TV, foosball table, train table. I mean, it's just like the kids' paradise up there, which is great because parents can hang out downstairs or outside or whatever, and the kids can just play up there. And
sure,
my kids just play up there whenever we're over there. So I love that property.
Sure. That sounds awesome. Like you said, building that experience is super helpful. I know when we went, my friends and I do a guys trip every year.
Yep.
And last year we went to Zion National Park and we did this cabin in the woods was our experience. And they had awesome. Adirondack chairs, a fire pit. Every night we were out there just making food or watching. There's a fight that was on UFC fight. So we had a little iPad set up out there, stuff like that. It's always fun. Max number of houses that you would own if you could. Is there a number that you would stop at that you feel comfortable? Or it's too much to manage? I got 100 doors and I need a team of people to run this for me.
So this is something I actually talk about often. I absolutely despise when a real estate investor says, well, I've got 100 doors or I've got 1,000 doors or whatever else. Because 90% of the time, they do not own those properties on their own. What they've done is they've done a syndication or a fund or a joint venture of some kind where essentially they're working with other people. Like a syndication, they are basically a glorified property manager using money from a bunch of people to then purchase properties. And now they're the ones typically managing it and then only keeping a small percentage of the profits. That's a great method if you're wanting to scale and grow quickly and leave your job and do that full time. And no shade to those guys at all. I just don't prefer that method because well, number one, these people will get arrogant about it, and I've got so many doors, blah blah blah. Like I've grown to 100 doors in a year or whatever. It's like,
but I make 5% on the profit alone.
Yeah, exactly right. Where for us personally, I own 100% of all of my properties outside of bank financing, but I haven't done anything with anybody else. So like I was able to, maybe not grow as fast as a number of doors, but be able to keep it all, plus make all of the decisions for ourselves. I don't have to go to other people and say, well, hey, I'm thinking about selling this one, or I'm thinking about doing, these updates or whatever. Like I sit down with my business partner, my wife, and we make these decisions. So we, at where we are now, we have 10 doors currently because we just sold a couple, the duplex, and we're hoping to buy 2 more this year. Honestly, like, I don't know. It's hard to say because on one hand, I don't want to stop moving stuff around because, we haven't bought a property for a year and a half. A lot of people don't know that. The last property I bought was October of 2022. I was literally in the parking lot of the office that we closed on our property in because I had to have W-2 income. I had to have proof of income in order to qualify for the loan. So I called, my boss already knew ahead of time, but I called him in the parking lot and put in my 2 weeks. And I have not bought a property since then. We've used the time to build up the properties we have and make them more profitable. But I spend 2 to 3 hours a week managing what I have currently. And if I add on more, it will add more time to that. And realistically, with my kids young right now, I don't really want to spend more than 5 to 7 hours a week needing to do this stuff and be involved. So if I can have a lower number of doors with a max amount of profit, that would be my preference. I don't think I would ever want to have more than 15 properties. That's kind of my cutoff. I know I could hire property managers, but that still creates the extra headache of needing to deal with other people and communicate with other people, where we can just do our own thing and not need to worry about that. So
sure. No, I love that. Dream car.
Well, I pulled up in a 2011 Honda Pilot, so
nice.
Is that not a dream car? Is that
something without a squeaky wheel? Maybe, that's probably good.
Hey, it's reliable, and I paid cash for it. It's hard. I like cars, but I've never really been a car guy. Sure. I know cars well enough, but for me, especially with 4 kids, and I've got 4-wheelers for all of them too, and we live in the country, and they ride their bikes around and stuff, I get dings and scratches and stuff, so I'd have a hard time spending money on a car. Maybe when they're a little older, I would. There's always...
Like not even like the rationalization,
like just crazy. Don't rationalize it.
It's in the garage. You put a tarp over it if you really want to. Something that's awesome to have in the garage.
My dream car from a kid has always been a Lamborghini. I want to have a green Lamborghini. That's the one. So if I had to just spit fire and answer, green Lamborghini, I don't care what kind, just a green Lamborghini would be cool. So that's the one.
I love that. Yeah, I've been a Jeep guy for a long time. And so when I got my Jeep, everyone's like, it's just a Jeep. Who cares? I'm like, this is like my dream car. I love this thing. It's like my favorite thing.
Do you know Chris Crone? He big real estate an investor guy, and he's got, I think it's a Jeep Gladiator that's been totally just decked out with 2 sets of back wheels, and
sure.
It's basically a tank, where you've got bulletproof glass and siding, and he's literally got a 50 cal turret on the top of it.
I have seen. Yeah, that's the dude. Yep, I know you're talking about now because I've seen that. I think Ryan Magin was doing interviews with him. He's a guy in my world that does like TikTok influencing editing for people. I've seen that video.
Yeah. Chris is a lot of things, but he's got some cool toys for sure. So.
Sure. Yeah. You talk about social media influencers in that space that are just doing things that get people's attention.
Way out there. Yeah.
Favorite vacation spot that you've gone to or that you'd recommend people go to?
So right off the bat, my wife and I love South Padre Island in Texas. We owned a condo there, which I talked about earlier, for a little bit, but we spend 3 months out of the year there. Living in the Midwest, it's a no-brainer. We want to get away from the snow, though this last year wasn't so bad here, but we love it down there. As far as like a vacation spot, I don't know if I call it that. It's more of a relocation for us. It's not as like vacation-y, like touristy type of stuff as other spots, but we love it down there. We also really enjoy Colorado Springs area, Manitou Springs. visiting like Glenwood and Steamboat and stuff like that. We did a tour of that last year. I highly recommend that. But either beach or mountains, those are kind of our two to go to. So
sure. Love it. Let's see here. Favorite thing to shop for? You said cars are not on that list. What's the thing that you like shopping for?
I don't know if I can say on here.
Okay.
I like things that go pew pew.
Oh, no, you can say that.
I can say that? Okay, yeah. Okay. I am a
This is not TikTok. You can say gun. Guns.
I live in Iowa, so, and I've got land I can shoot off my back deck. So I love investing in guns. I'll call it that. When I moved out there 5 years ago, it was like, gold, silver, guns, houses, right? So those were the fundamentals of investing for me.
What's a recent pickup you've had that you like shooting recently?
Chris Vector. Okay. Totally decked out Chris Vector. It's got like a collapsible stock and upgraded Magpul furniture, nice scope and a red dot and a flashlight on it. So it's totally unreasonable, but it's a lot of fun. So I've also got a Draco. It's like an AK style 9mm as well. So yeah, got some fun stuff. So
So we're going to your house when the zombie apocalypse happens. Okay.
Sure. I know all of my guns went down in the boating accident last year. So
Wink, wink. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. So I don't want to scare anybody when they go in my basement. So.
That's funny. Yeah, this is not TikTok. You can talk about guns if you want. That's fine. It's always fun. I think especially as I get older, I think guns are really fun because we have a shotgun, but also my friends and I, when we go, like we went to Vegas and did the gun range where light machine guns are legal to shoot there in a gun range. So I got 100 rounds on an M29 saw that I wasted in like 10 seconds. It was like
that sounds fantastic.
It's like a freedom boner, as I always say. It was really funny. Okay, biggest misconception about being a landlord.
Ooh, okay. So I get this. I mean, it's like a daily thing on TikTok. You are a leech on society. You are just stealing houses from everybody else and making it impossible to buy. I would say, yes, there are like some bigger companies out there, BlackRock, stuff like that they are coming in and they are buying turnkey properties and stuff. But the majority of small investors like myself, which we are the majority of investors out there, still, most of us are buying properties that need value added to them, that need renovations. Because like I've said, I'm not going to buy a property that's ready to go because most of the time, if I'm buying a property, I'll just give numbers around here. Typically, like in Des Moines right now, if you want to buy a turnkey property that's completely renovated, ready to go, you're probably looking closer to depending on where in the city, 250 to 300 range, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's
probably
pretty fair.
Closer to that.
Yep.
You're not going to meet the 1% rule with renting it because the rent's not going to be $2,500 to $3,000 a month. So you're probably going to lose money on renting it. Or cut very, very close, where I just wouldn't be comfortable with doing it. So,
which is why our DNA says this is not a good place because of those calculations.
Yeah. Now with the short-term rental, the income potential is greater. I would say you can make 4 to 6 times the amount of money on a short-term that you could on a long-term, but it just depends on what your goals are there. But like
in the location, like if it's in downtown near the event centers,
exactly,
or if you're in like Norwalk.
I know some people that are like down south that have, some way out there stuff and they're killing it on Airbnb too. So again, it depends on the host and stuff. But I would say the biggest misconception is that we're stealing houses, that we're leeching off people. What I do is I buy houses that need help, because otherwise I'm not going to make money off of them. Like this last year, I helped my brother-in-law start up and he buy his first rental property. We bought this house for $130 in a neighborhood where houses were selling for $200. It needed a full gut job. We did all of the work, new cabinets, countertops, bathroom, bedrooms, carpets, flooring, everything, and put about 15 to 20 into it. It's a smaller home. And now it's worth $200,000, even though he's got about, $145 into it now, and he's renting it for like $1,650. So like there's still properties out there that you can make money on, but like this property sat there for a long time. Nobody else was buying this thing because, realistically, like it's hard to get conventional loans or FHA loans and stuff like that because people don't realize, I could, there's a lot of people that want to buy properties that they can do work on. No, there's not. People want to buy properties that they can just move into. But even if
I'm one of those people, after living in a fixer-upper, our first one, I'm like, our new house was like, we just come in and put our stuff in and we're here. It's like,
exactly.
so much nicer.
But even still, even if there are some people out there that want to put in the work, they might have a very hard time finding a loan for it. I built a relationship with lenders and stuff and worked on different things where I can, like I'm trying to get a conventional loan right now, but depends on the type of property I buy. I might need to do a DSCR loan, which is a debt service coverage ratio loan. It's meant for real estate investors. You basically get approved off of the potential for like the rent potential on the property, not off of your income. But it's harder to get like standard financing for things as just a regular individual. So I buy typically properties that have been abandoned or forgotten or undesirable, and then I go in, I make them pretty again, and then I rent them out and I provide, a place for people to stay. So that's a big misconception of real estate investors, that we're just leeching. It's like, I'm not here to leech. Like, yes, I'm here to make income, but at the end of the day, I'm also making neighborhoods nice, and I'm adding value to the homes around it as well, including your home and your home and your home that's on the same street, because your property values are going up as I'm increasing mine. So, that's probably the number one.
Sure. No, I love it. That concludes the lightning round. Now you can take a breath. I think another piece that we can talk about, which we were talking a lot off camera before we started, was really like your rise on social media. Because that's how I first came to know who you were. I'd seen some of your stuff on social media, and then I realized you lived here in Iowa. I'm like, holy crap! Like,
yeah. I'm basically a big deal.
Sure, yeah, the big deal. I think it's interesting because it's like
that's what my wife tells me. So.
right. Things you've already known for
different
years.
Context,
right. Jesus. Okay. I think it's interesting to look at that because the landscape is so different, right? You could just kind of keep to yourself, provide this lifestyle for your family, keep doing your thing, but you chose to go out and talk about the things you're doing, share online for better or for worse. Talk to me a little bit about what prompted you to even get online in the first place.
Yeah. So, I've always been more of a techie guy / I'm driving a lot. I was driving a lot for work at previous jobs, and I got into podcasts and just listened. It's like the biggest thing, is people saying they don't have the time. Well, you're driving somewhere typically for work, or you have a break here and there or whatever. It's like, educate yourself. Don't spend the time listening to music. Do that sometimes, but by listening to different real estate investing podcasts and stuff. And I would do that and kind of build up knowledge that way. But I also got into like listening to people on TikTok and social media talk about things. I always bring up his name. I've met him one time, and I hope to meet him again. And I'm sure he thinks I'm super weird because I mention him like at every podcast. But there's a guy named Michael Elefante. He is pretty big in the short-term rental world and on social media now as well. But him and his wife, I resonated with their story really well because he was like a guy who worked at Dunkin' Donuts, and him and his wife, at the time that I started listening, he had just left his job. He had worked up into a sales job and stuff, but they like liquidated their retirement funds and went all in on short-term rentals. And they were like traveling the country in a van, like a little Class B RV or something like that. And going to different national parks and living financially free. So he's doing these TikToks from, the back of the van on a, little bed or whatever. But just like, I've left my job and we're free. And it's like, dude, like this guy is a real guy that actually did this. Not just some, buddy that came from a bunch of money or whatever. Like this is possible. Now
I think I'm picturing who you're talking about are all his stuff's in Nashville, right?
He has
like a strawberry blonde hair.
I think he has one or two properties, but yeah,
I think I'm picturing the guy you're talking about. I'm terrible with names, but if you show me a face, like the Chris guy,
he lives in like North Carolina or something like that now. Okay. But Nashville, he's got like one or two properties out there, I think. But he's kind of all over. He's got Florida and stuff now too. I think he's got 7 or 8 big, like luxury properties. So
sure.
But I got inspired by that to do our first short-term rental. We had been doing long-term rentals, but like I listened to him for a year before I was finally like, let's do this. Like he's making a bunch of money. Let's try this out. So that was part of it. But then the other part was a bet with my brother-in-law. I wanted to, and I talked a lot about like, hey, I hadn't quit my job yet, but we were, we had finally just opened our first short-term rental after this. And it's like, how do I teach other people to do this stuff? Like, I don't just want to keep this to myself. I want to help other people find the same success that we have through real estate investing. So we were talking and he's like, there's no way you can, get on social media and become something and then monetize it too. And I'm like, I think you can monetize social media. Like TikTok pays you for views and stuff. And like, let's try it out. I'm going to try it out and just see what happens. And it's a way for me to tell my story. I mean, I started just talking, sharing, I am. Like my first video was like just super random and generic, just the camera just sitting there looking at me, holding my son. And I'm like, I am working full time. I hope to maybe leave my job within the next 15 years or so, retire early and be able to do real estate investing full time. This is kind of how we started. And people just started watching. And then all of a sudden one thing led to the next. And I had videos start popping off and people start reaching out. And there's a lot of haters out there. But I mean, I get messages every day from people that are just like, thank you so much for what you're doing. I just bought my first property because of listening to the stuff from you. And it's cool to see a guy who, has a degree as a youth pastor and then got a job as a cell phone rep who actually made it and was able to figure out a way to make this work. Yeah. So that started inspiring me. And then when I left my job in October 2022, that's like, I'm going to go full time. Like I'm going to just dive into social media and start making content regularly. So at first it was like 3-4 times a week I'd post a video. Now I try to do, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 videos a week, one per day.
Well, if you're only managing for the whole week, like 2 to 5 hours, like you've got a lot of extra time if you need to do those things. So
it became something where it was a hobby and then it turned into a passion of mine because now I get to help other people find the success through it. And I get paid from TikTok for views and stuff, but I just get to share our story. I mean, I get to share what we're doing and show, us and the kids in houses working on stuff. And that just resonates with people and it gives me a way to be able to share our story with people. So that's kind of what got me started on it. I have taken it more seriously with a couple other things, finally launching our first course. I was never going to do this, but was reached out to from a couple other guys, the Homeboys, and they are big-time real estate investors. And they're like, we just want to see other people find financial freedom through passive real estate investing. Can you help us do that? We want to put a course together with you. They're like super old. I hope that they see this, but they're a bunch of funny old guys and
like 50s, 60s.
I know like probably 40s. But,
Gotcha.
But no, they're good on social media too. The Homeboys, so you need to give them a follow too. But they brought me out for a podcast actually, and we hit it off really well, and that's when we kind of started talking about it. But we put it together, and we're just about giving it away. I've spent thousands in travel and expenses to put this thing together, and we're just hoping to recoup some of that cost. But essentially, we're
because they're in Indiana, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're like flying to their studio, filming.
Yeah, I flew out there while I was down in South Padre actually to do this too. So to film some of this, and I'm going back out there again at the end of next month. But we just launched March 1st, and we finally have a way. I mean, this is a full, like, blown 4 or 5 hours worth of content, interactive worksheets and guides and stuff, budget calculators, everything else to get you from point A to buying your first rental property, knowing all of the ins and outs of long-term, short-term, mid-term, different types of lending options and everything else, just to help people. And it's cool seeing people start to get into it already and learn and just have a guided avenue to be able to do that. So
sure.
But yeah.
Because with the social media side too, are you just posting on TikTok? Like how many followers do you have? Are you posting omni-channel? Like what's kind of your strategy now?
I am Rental Cashflow is the username that I chose when I started. I'm like, that's weird that that's actually available, but whatever, I'll just do Rental Cashflow. And I started on TikTok. I started doing Instagram about, 4 or 5 months ago. I mainly do TikTok. So Instagram is pretty little. Instagram's only like 5,000, but I think I've got about 130,000 on TikTok now, which is just crazy to me to think. I mean, sometimes I'm like, well, I'm still a small fish, which I really am, but that there's 130,000 people that actually, care about the things that I'm saying is pretty cool. I just opened a YouTube channel as well. I just started doing that because I felt like I should to do some longer form stuff as well. But yeah, mostly TikTok.
Sure. Well, and it's always interesting too because there's and we can talk afterwards. There's a ton of like ways and like softwares that you can take the TikToks, download them, take the watermark off, and repost to all your other platforms, so you can have your entire catalog on everything.
And I've been doing that too.
Yeah, because YouTube's huge with that. Like for me, I have like 17,000 subscribers, which doesn't seem like a lot, but
no, that's good.
A lot of them are search-based videos, so people find them through looking. Yeah, and then I get a ton of inbound from that. But then like the shorts don't really monetize as much, but the long forms do, because if you find like I have like on the side here, I have a review video that I did on MailChimp like years ago, like MailChimp, the email software. And that's a super highly competitive term because they're on there running ads, and so is Constant Contact and Active Campaign and all their competitors. So like whenever anyone looks at my video, they're getting like 3 ads for these competitors. Yeah. And it makes a ton of money because there's like certain types of videos. But the reason I bring this up, because real estate and finance pay the highest CPM out of any niche. Yep. So like for me, I might get like every 1,000 views, I'll get like $8. Like for you get like 25 to 30 because everyone wants to run ads on real estate and finance because those are the people that have the money to buy whatever the people are doing. So if you would be amazed at how much money you can make in that niche just by putting out longer form videos. But that's a complete aside. But I just think it's interesting, like which platforms you go with, because the viewer behavior is different on TikTok, as you've seen, compared to like other platforms too. Tell me a little bit about your experience as a creator there.
Yeah, I feel like, and I mentioned this earlier, TikTok is, I don't really care for them as a whole anyway. I feel like it's just a way to drain your life. But, you've got teenage girls twerking in their underwear, and then you've got me talking about real estate, fully clothed. Come on,
man, you want some views?
I know. Yeah,
you want some views?
You don't want to see this in my underwear. So no, thanks. So it's definitely different for sure. And you have to be more like purposefully driven when you're on TikTok, like looking for the right type of things and following the right type of people, because you have like a For You page and then like following page and stuff, and I follow the type of people that I want to watch and only stick to that. But yeah, TikTok is interesting. Like I just joined back in August the creativity program beta. You have to have 10,000 followers and I think 100,000 video views every month or something like that, which I was at 120K followers back then. But I joined that, and you get paid on videos that are longer than a minute in length. So that's kind of like, people ask me like, well, why are you making videos and stuff? Well, number one is to help people. And then number two, it's like I get paid, for doing these, not from just people buying a course. I'm not there to sell a course. I'm there to help people. But then I get paid to do it, which helps incentivize me to, continue as well and justify taking the time to do it. But I get paid for videos longer than a minute. Anything under a minute, I get nothing. But anything over, I get paid. It just varies. Qualified views vary. But I've averaged about $2,000 a month just from views alone.
Sure. But that's amazing though, man, because you really think like, if the real estate stopped cash flowing, you'd still have other income streams, which is what the whole point of that is. And if you have the right heart behind it, you're not just solely making videos to make money. It's just a byproduct. I think that's a great, awesome thing.
Yeah. And I do other things. Like I opened an Etsy shop where I have different things that I've created for short-term rental stuff. Like I have an Airbnb analysis calculator. I've got a shopping list. I've got like a co-hosting card, all sorts of stuff that I have for basically free on there. But that I paid like $500 on that, just selling stuff for $1 or $2. Last year, I'm an Amazon associate. Made some money there, and then I do paid partnerships. That's kind of my other stream. So I'm very picky. I get offers all the time, but I only like to work with people that I actually utilize or believe in their company as well, and it's in line with what I do. So Hospitable is one that I worked with a few months ago. Awesome company, but they are a property management software for our short-term rentals. So they help us automate a lot that we do.
And you guys actually use it too.
Oh yeah. And I was using them long before that. Price Labs is what we use for pricing tool. It's called dynamic pricing. So they basically adjust our prices based off of demands for specific dates. and, like availability, like what they're seeing competitors do and stuff like that as well. So they update our prices every 24 hours. I worked with them. I worked with like a company, Wind Sentry device, where it monitors smoking in short-term rentals and sound. So like if the sound is above a certain decibel for so long, it'll alert you, like basically notify you of a party, or it can actually detect between like cigarette smoke, cigar, like weed, or like just smoke coming from the kitchen from cooking something. So you get notified if there's somebody smoking in the property. So I've worked with them, and now I'm working with AirDNA, which I absolutely love. So, but yeah, I mean, I've done those, and I average, I don't know, $1,000 a month off of paid partnerships and stuff too. So,
Sure.
but
That's
there's lots of ways to monetize social media. Where I've made more some months off of that than I have off of my last job. So if you're not on social media, you need to get on social media, because it's great to tell your story and get paid for what you do. So
Sure. No, I love that. And it's super interesting to hear, because a lot of people, they would never think, okay, I'm going to start this business, but to document it and to do those things, I think is huge. Like for me with my journey with that, it's like, I had so many, like the YouTube's notorious for like just in TikTok with the anonymous accounts. It's like people just say the nastiest things because they
do.
They're not like,
people are evil and cruel.
It's not tied to like their Facebook profile where you can like go and I've seen people literally get fired for like things they've said online. They will direct message it to their boss or whatever. But the anonymity kind of limits that. How do you kind of keep a level head with some of those the trolls out there that are hiding under that bridge? Like, I hope you fail.
So I love this quote. I think in the right context, I love this quote. Not for everything. As I've heard some people that are pretty arrogant say this, and I don't mean to come across this way, but it's only those who are less successful than you will criticize you. Those who are more successful than you will encourage you. I'm sure I didn't say that word for word right, but and again, in the right context, because you can define success as many different things. But if you're looking at it from a real estate perspective, or monetization perspective, would be what I'm trying to get at here. Most of the people that are criticizing you on social media when you're starting out, or even now, like it was hard. It was really hard for me to get like these nasty messages and nasty comments and just stuff. It's like, why are people so hateful? I'm just trying to help, and share my story of what we've done and encourage other people to do the same. It's like, why are people being so mean? It's like, you have to realize a lot of these people are either jealous of you and the things that you're doing, and they wish that they could have it for themselves, or they're just jealous or, frustrated with their own situation because they're, not seeing the success in their own lives that they want to have. And they don't like other people talking about the success that they don't have. So that's, you're not going to have somebody who's doing better than you, in that area get on and be like, oh, well, you need to stop or whatever. Because those guys, like myself, like I want to see other people find the success. So if I see somebody, I just, I've got 2 properties, I'm not going to get on and be like, oh, you knock it off. Like you leech on such like, stop it. God damn it. Yeah. Right. It's like, that's, you need to think about that. And then also remember, it's like, even if 95% of the people out there hate me and call me a leech and, give me these mean comments or whatever, there's still the 5% of people out there that are watching in silence and learning and listening. And those are the people that you're talking to, not the haters. You're talking to the people that are actually listening. And you just need to keep that in your mind, because those people are picking up on it. And even if they never tell you, they're out there. So
I love that. And for me, like my platforms are YouTube and LinkedIn. Those are like the 2 places I go because I do videos for businesses. So like that helps a lot. Yeah. LinkedIn is the same thing. It's like, I'll post every week. I'm at probably like twice a week for the last 3-4 years, but I'll have like people that have been on there that have followed me for like 5 years that have never said anything. Yeah. They watch, they're looking at stuff, and then like, we need a video for our company. And then they come to me and say, hey, I've been following you for years. And I'm like, I've never heard of you. You've never liked a single one of my posts or commented, but you're watching. Like people are always watching. So I think if you put enough out in the world, as long as you have good intent, I think that's a big thing.
Yep.
What's kind of we talked about all the upside and everything. What would you say is like some of the biggest risks when it comes to being a landlord, and as you've kind of accumulated properties? Because as you've mentioned, like you're taking out loans on these things. Like what are some of the things that come to your mind?
There are 0 risks at all, and nothing to be scared of. Yeah. So I would say like the biggest risks of it are, there's always like the chance that you could lose money, right? I mean, it's a money thing. Like you buy a property and it doesn't rent for what you want it to, or whatever else there. Or you have some sort of big expense or whatever. It's all part of it. You're going to have expenses. You're going to have vacancies. You're going to have all of these things. But it's taking that into account. Do your due diligence. Don't buy properties that are turnkey right away. That way you can, take less risk on, have a lower mortgage, and be smart with your investing. But with that being said, it's like you're going to have things that'll come up and you just have to try and plan for that. There's definitely risk in that. But I guess like my answer to your question would be with anything else. And you're asking me a question that I think you already know the answer to as well. But like in business, with whatever it is, whether it be real estate investing or going off and starting your own company or whatever, the risk is so minimal in comparison to the reward of running something on your own. Because what I tell everybody is it is far more risky to bet on an employer to keep that paycheck coming to you and trust that you're going to keep a job and that is your only source of income than it is to bet on yourself and, whatever your dream or aspiration is. So because I am far more reliable in myself than, an employer might be. I got laid off of 4 jobs in 10 years due to just a restructure or a program closing or, downsizing or whatever. And there was one of them that gave me 4 weeks, yay, to find something else. But the others were, you've got a week or whatever, or, sorry, you're done. And if I didn't have rental properties as well, I would have been screwed because that's the money that you got coming in. People just think, oh, well, my job, I've got job security. Job security is there. So what? Maybe you have a job that's a little more secure that you're valued and you're still filling the pockets of somebody else until you're 65 years old. I mean, the government's talking about, new age of retirement is going to be 70, which realistically, there's no social security, it's social insecurity. There's no pensions. So like guys like us, in our 20s, 30s, whatever, it's like, you've got to do something. Like you're not just going to be able to just work for somebody and just think that you're just going to have magical money when you get to that age that you're basically, the average lifespan of a male is 74 years old in the United States right now. So you work until you're 65 and you got 9 years that are probably not going to be good, healthy years.
Or if we get to 70, you get 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years of life.
It's like the best 4 years of your life were college.
There you go.
And then right before you die.
Exactly. Then you're dead. So it's like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You try and you fail and you get right back to where you were before. Maybe you have a little bit more debt because of it, but it was still worth trying. Learn, educate yourself, take calculated risks. There's risk in everything that you do, but bet on yourself, because if you don't, you're just going to find yourself spinning in circles working for somebody else.
No, I love that. I think just, again, taking a complete accountability, because if you lose your job, it's woe is me, the man's bad. But it's like, if your properties aren't cash flowing, you're like, crap, I got to do something. Like you have the onus on you to like make a change. I thought that was interesting. I had Cole Netton on a couple of weeks ago. He's a former Iowa State kicker, but he's also a filmmaker now too.
That's awesome.
Self-employed guy. Yeah. And he was saying same thing. He's like, I know if I'm short on money, like I can go find a project in a week and I can go in that'll make it happen. It's like, I have the ability to always feed my family, Oh
yeah. I made a video that, I don't know, I typically try to be careful with these, but like I made a video a couple months ago that was like, this is going to be like make people so angry, but it's like, if you're a man or if you're a woman, whatever, it doesn't matter. But like, if you are a provider for your family and you are not making $100,000 a year now, what are you doing with your time? And it's like, and I'm not trying to like downplay the guys that aren't, but it's like, if you're through college and you're, mid to late 20s or whatever, it's like, we live in a world today that there are so many different ways to make money out there and supplement your income. Why are you living on one stream? Why are you just working, clocking in at 9 o'clock, clocking out at 5 o'clock and being, okay, I'm done. This is good, and the only way that I can make more money is by climbing the corporate ladder or whatever. It's like, I'm not trying to be rude to these people, but it's just like, there are so many things, maybe you can say, well, my priority is my family and I want to spend the time with them. It's like, well, what's going to happen if you go to lose your job and you don't have any money coming in? Then what? I mean, it's not just, yes, it is important to have the time with your family, but it's also important to take care of your family from a financial, physical, spiritual standpoint. And if you're not doing all of those things and finding ways to monetize other things, it doesn't need to be super time consuming. And like we've talked about, I mean, where I can make, $3-4 grand a month on social media and I'm only spending like 5 hours a week doing this. There's things out there that people can do. You're just, not putting in the effort and the time to find it. So
sure. Well, I think finding, again, like you mentioned this early on too, it's like you sacrificed a ton early on to get where you are, but it was like, okay, any extra money, we're taking it and doing this with it to fuel our goal. It's not like we're just making as much money as we can so we can get the Louis bag and the green Lamborghini or whatever. Like those things, I think, it's not to chase like a materialistic thing. It's like this ideal lifestyle that we have. Exactly. I think that's super important. And just the security, like you said, especially in an industry like yours where there's a lot of things that could happen that are out of your control. Like you're controlling what you can't control, which is income diversity and trying to risk mitigation, essentially, like lowering your risk by having multiple properties in different long-term, short-term. Like you've diversified very well in that realm, which helps kind of mitigate the risk, but also having other income streams helps a lot. So you're not, again, laying it in bed at night like, oh my God, what happens if this and this and this?
But instead we live in a society where people just want to look a certain way instead of actually be a certain way. So, I'm going to have this $800-900 car payment and drive this fancy car and live in this fancy house and all these other things where on the inside I have zero money in my bank account and I'm living paycheck to paycheck because of the decisions I'm making. And what's that doing? It's just making you feel all tingly and sparkly inside because people get to look at you and think that you're the certain way, but realistically you're not. It's like, I'd rather drive, a car that I can easily afford to pay 10 times over and not have to worry about. And not to say that it's not, that it's a bad thing to have a nice car. Like I will have nicer cars. I was super jealous of your Jeep, by the way.
No, thank you. We'll take it for a spin.
I want that car.
We'll go find a mud patch. You can rip like, a donut.
It's are you buying a car, and just because you want to look a certain way, or are you buying that car because you can afford it and still be able to invest and figure out your long-term goals as well? Because people are just so stuck in the now that they lose focus on how things are going to play out, because we're not always going to be in our 20s and 30s and be able to do the same things and make the same income as later. So
sure. No, I think that's great. In terms of like the, if someone's listening to this and they've made it all the way through and they're really interested in doing rental investing, they're kind of new on the scene or they've listened to a couple shows, like what would be your advice now looking back 10 properties later? Like how would be your recommended way to get your first rental property for somebody?
So I love the term, the analysis paralysis. This goes to anything, but, and I'm guilty of it as well. You will never know everything. You're going to, need to learn as you go. Yes, it's good to kind of study up and learn some before you start, but the best way to learn and the fastest way to learn is by doing. So stop waiting and just get into it now. There are plenty of properties out there. People are saying, well, I'm going to wait until the interest rate goes down. When that interest rate goes down, the market is going to be way more flooded with buyers and still have the same number of properties out there, and sale prices are going to skyrocket, and it's going to be way harder to find properties where they are now. You can always refinance later, but you cannot get a different price on a home, later that's less. So buy now and figure it out as you go. But start with one. Your goal may be to have 10 or 15, but buy the first one, get into it, learn as you go. And
what's Dave Ramsey always say? That buy the price, date the rate, or something like that. That's one of the things that gets thrown around there, because you can always refinance if it's like 2021.
That's for a primary residence. Dave Ramsey does not agree with buying rental properties, but sure. But to each their own. Dave is great, by the way. I love Dave for helping people get out of debt, but building wealth quickly is not quite his motto. It's more long-term.
Sure.
But each their own. So that may not be right for everybody. And what I do might not be right for everybody too. So
sure. But would you recommend like house hacking like what you did, or doing like a cheaper?
No, it's
okay. It's okay. So, like a cheaper vacation rental. Like what's kind of a good way that you would suggest somebody get in?
if you're young and you don't have a house, or you're old and you don't have a house, or whatever, I would say house hack is the best way to start. There's conventional loans out there if you have good credit where you can do 0% down. You can get into a house for super cheap, but buy a house that needs work. Do not buy a turnkey property where when you go to move out and rent it out, you're going to lose money on your rent. Find something that needs some work, fix it up as you live there, and then move on and rent it out. So, you can do FHA for like 3.5% down, conventional 3, sometimes 0, depending on the lender. Interest rate's going to be higher if you do that. So I would try and do 3% down. Save up that little bit first. Get on a budget calculator. Start budgeting, especially when you're starting first out, to figure out, make sure that you're investing right and saving, because people don't realize how much money they spend unless they put it in front of them. But do that if you don't have a house and you're willing to move. We kind of got burnt out of that after 5. So if you have a house and you're like, well, how do I buy an investment property? You can do stuff like a vacation rental loan for 10% down, as long as you're utilizing the house a couple weeks out of the year. Sometimes those interest rates can be higher, so maybe you do need to put 20% down, but that doesn't mean you need to save it. You could we've seen over the last couple of years where houses have grown in value at least $100,000 for a lot of houses. And
sure.
I'm sure you have equity in your home. So if you own a home now, you're wanting to buy a property, look into a home equity line of credit. If you've got a nice rate on your property now where you're 2, 3, 4%, do not do a cash out refi because that'll increase your interest rate. Instead, do a home equity line of credit and just borrow the equity and use that for a down payment on a rental property. And get into it that way. So there's plenty of ways to do it. You don't just need to sit there and save. You can find ways to be creative. There's seller financing options, sub-2 options. There's lots of different things that you can do. So
sure. No, I love it. I think it's a super helpful conversation. I know we've touched on a lot of stuff. We've covered a lot of things in terms of like where people can find you more. Obviously, it's Rental Cashflow on social media, but where can people learn more about you and the new course you just launched as well? Yeah,
so TikTok is the main one. If you just look for Rental Cashflow or Matt, honestly, type in Rental Cashflow it'll bring me up. But Matt Krueger, Rental Cashflow, TikTok, Instagram. I just started on YouTube. Don't look there yet. It's very pitiful. TikTok's the main one. I've got a link in my bio that's got the course there as well with the homeboys. It's a full-blown real estate investing course. It'll teach you everything that you need to know from now to actually buying your first property. That's every piece of knowledge that I have and they have put into one piece. So, that's where you find me. TikTok, Rental Cashflow, Matt Krueger. That's where I'm at.
Super dope. Well, thanks again so much, Matt, for coming on the show. Glad I could grab you after you got back from your awesome vacation. You can get back in here.
No.
But yeah, thanks so much for coming on. And if you made it this far in the show, make sure to give us a big 5-star review if you're on iTunes. Subscribe if you're on YouTube or Spotify. We post every single Monday morning, all types of videos on business, entrepreneurship, and personal development. My name is Ryan Snod. It rhymes with odd, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace. Thank you so much for watching yet another episode of the Rhymes with the Odd podcast. We really do appreciate your support. If you could give us a 5-star review on Apple iTunes, that makes a world of difference, guys. Also, if you're tuning in on YouTube or Spotify, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss another episode, and check us out on social media. Also, if you'd like to inquire more about our services here at Snod Media Group or learn about doing your own podcast for your own business, you can find us at snodmedia.com. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace.